All right. So welcome to this evening's session through CIPD Manchester, where we're going to be focusing on the profession map and exploring its value, pretty much what it says on the tin. And if we want to just go forward to the first slide. So basically, this is the agenda for the evening. Um, Obviously throughout the session, apart from in the Q&A session, if you can just make sure that you do stay muted, because obviously that will give us the best recording. I'm just going to go through a couple basic things. The session itself, I'm going to start with an overview of the map and look at the different sections. And then we're also going to talk about how we can use it in different ways. Then, as I said, we'll come out of that. We've got a Q&A section. I'll review some upcoming events, and then we'll stop the recording. And there will be time for networking at the end. So we hope that you will stay on with us for that. All right. So if we go to the next slide. It is going to be an interactive session today. Before anyone panics because you're tired after a long day at work, by interactive, what I mean is we're going to be using different features in Mentimeter. So we've got some different polls and activities. We've got a quiz, but it would also be really great if you are active in the chat and also using those reaction buttons in Zoom as well. And I think because obviously we've got quite a mixed audience this evening, the chat's a really great place as well to share any links that you think might be useful, make any comments, maybe mention different things you've done with the profession map at the different points in the session. I think that will be really helpful. And obviously, as you know, we've got our branch volunteers here this evening. We've got Theodora, Julia, and Lauren, who are all obviously supporting the session, monitoring the chat and things like that. So then I'll just quick review of Zoom. At this point, I think everybody is an expert. The main thing I want to draw your attention to, as I mentioned before, we do want things to be as interactive as possible. So please make sure that you do use those reaction buttons as well as another way of engaging with us and with the content, and engaging with each other as well if somebody is sharing something. So that would be great. All right. So I've been thinking about this session for quite a while, to be honest. And the first thing I want to do is just kind of get a temperature check of the room. All right. So this is simply, how do you use the CIPD Profession Map? So if you scan the QR code at the beginning, then you'll already be in Mentimeter and you should be seeing this screen and able to answer. Yep, some people have found it already. If you missed the beginning, we'll put the Mentimeter code in the chat for you. So basically, if you go to menti.com and then type in the code 21864782, that will take you to the slide that you're currently seeing so that you can vote as well. With this one, since obviously you've got the options for workplace, for career development, never use it. We've also got others, so by all means, please do comment in the chat and kind of expand on the ways that you do use the profession map. That'd be really helpful. Okay. Looking good, looking good. All right, we still got people connecting in, saying hello. That's lovely. All right. So if you did vote, because I can see we've got 4 votes for other there on how you use the profession map, if you could just post a quick comment in the chat looking at what you do there. I can see we do have a couple already. So looking at team development, helping them to reflect on how their work links to the map. That's really great. Using it for your studies, absolutely. That comes up a lot. And I can see you say you haven't really used it since, so hopefully this session will change your mind about that as well. All right, somebody's just starting now with their studies. All right, looks like that's been a pretty popular option. Planning a team day using the map to identify gaps in skills, knowledge, and behavior to create personal development plans. Excellent. Really targeted. Hopefully, what you'll take from this session is that there's a lot more to the map than you may have thought, and there's a lot that you can do with it as well. So, if we move on to the next slide, what you'll see is our poll is actually somewhat reflective of the poll that I did on LinkedIn. And that's one reason I wanted to kind of find out where people were this evening in thinking about the profession map. Um, because when I put this poll on LinkedIn originally, obviously only 57 people voted. So we're not talking about a huge number of people. However, I did think career development would be the most popular option, but I'll be honest, I wasn't prepared for more people to actually never use it. And that's also been reflected in our poll today. Obviously, we had very even numbers in terms of using it for career development and never using it at all. And then obviously just a few more falling either side of that. And that really surprised me because those 57 people all came from the HR profession. Most of them in HR, but there were a couple people like in L&D, OD, and it ran the whole range. So people just starting out in their careers, people who were students, all the way up to HR directors and people with 20, 30 years experience. So it was really across the board where these answers were falling. And I found that really interesting. And I also just thought, with so many people never using it, what a shame, because it really is a very useful tool. So that's what we're going to explore today. When we look at the other comments as well, I just wanted to mention there were some interesting things, just like you've shared in the chat. There were some interesting things that came up. So some people were using the map for upgrading, which, while that's part of career development, it's also a very specific aspect of it. Um, Thinking about the people cycle in general, right? And how does that relate to a company's thinking? So really kind of placing it within the workplace, helping to clients understand the full breadth of HR, because HR does a lot, let's face it. And not everybody out there recognizes all that our profession involves and gives us that full credit. And so this was a company that does outsourcing, an HR consultancy, who were then using it to really expand on what they did so that clients could be more aware of that. Came up with people who've now turned to coaching, who've moved from HR into coaching, using it when they're coaching HR professionals. Um, Even within the workplace, and this kind of reflects what one of our attendees just said in the chat as well about a particular development day, using it as a conversation starter. So the person in the chat had obviously taken that further and done something more targeted with it, but even just as a simple conversation starter about where somebody sees their career going and progressing. And obviously, as a couple of people mentioned, all important college assignments, whether you're studying at college or you're doing level 3, level 5, level 7 CIPD qualifications. All right. So we go on to the next slide. All right. So I'm sure you're all familiar with the way the map looks in general, because this hopefully isn't the first time that you're seeing it. So I'm basically just going to give you kind of an overall view of this. It's really helpful during this sort of section where you might find maybe sometimes your mind wandering, to try to pay attention, try to focus, because when we do get to the quiz, you'll actually get more out of it. Don't panic about that. I'm not you, the quiz is about the map, but you're going to be using the map to answer the questions. All right. So it's not that you've got to remember any answers, but I think if you're able to kind of focus now and really kind of think about the layers to the map, it will help you then navigating it later in answering those questions. So we start at the middle of the map, right? The circle. which is purpose. And while it is a circle, it is in fact, or should be, heart shaped, right? Because it is the very heart of the profession map. This is what everything stems from, right? And our purpose, I know you'll have heard it many, many times before, to champion better work and working lives. And so it doesn't matter where you are in the profession, whether you're a generalist, a specialist, starting out, a seasoned veteran, it doesn't matter. That is the core purpose of what we do each and every day. And then basically everything just expands out from the purpose, right? Expands out from the heart. So the next level, then going around our purpose, are our three values. All right. So with the three values, we're thinking about the first one, as you can see just to the left, principles led. All right. And there are three key principles that come up there. So we've got work matters, people matter, and professionalism matters. So again, that's echoing the purpose. Moving around to the right, we've got evidence-based. So this is when we're thinking about using evidence to support our case, whatever that might be, or in our decision making, because that allows our opinions essentially to carry more weight. And this was something actually just at the conference a couple of weeks ago. Some of the branch members were together and we were talking about this. And one of our co-chairs, Samantha Labanzu, was talking about and stressing the importance of using evidence to support your case, particularly when you're early in your career, right? Obviously, as you move through your career, that is still incredibly important, but you also build up your reputation and you build up your knowledge. But particularly when you're starting out, it really needs to be there. And obviously, this evidence, we can look at this in different ways, right? So we can be thinking about academic research, behavioral sciences. We can be thinking about your organization's data. Um, what about your stakeholders? What are their concerns? Where do they fit into the picture? And also practitioner expertise, right? So looking at other people working within the field who've got expertise in that particular area. So lots of different ways of collecting evidence. And then the third value, just coming down there at the bottom, outcomes driven, right? And so with this, we're wanting to make a positive difference on a personal level, on a professional level, and on a social level, right? So again, just like the map is radiating out, the work that we do in theory is also radiating out and having that wider impact in our communities and the world of work and beyond. Because at the end of the day, the greater the impact we have, the greater the value, um, or the greater our value as a profession. Um, and then just sort of sitting over the top then of our purpose and values, we've then got our core knowledge coming around first. So those are the things that we need to be experts on people, work and change, right? As you've got on the slide. And so this is something that it doesn't matter what your role is, it doesn't matter what your sector is, whether you're in a specialism or not. Um, this is what we all need working in the people profession and is necessary to be able to drive forward change in our organizations, to create that value and have that positive impact that we're wanting to have. And essentially, maybe another way of looking at it is this is kind of the theory behind the people profession. And then building on that core knowledge, you've got the core behaviors. All right. So again, coming back to that idea of effective decision making that we were talking about before, creating value. Again, all of that's echoed there. So with the core behaviors, we're thinking a bit more then around the ways that we think, the ways that we behave in order to be an effective people professional. And this level has actually been developed based on academic research, but also on feedback from people in the profession. And I should say, actually, that reminds me that also looking at those values, there's academic research behind all of those too. So if you go on the CIPD website, you can actually look into that a bit more and learn what went into formulating those values. Um, And with the core behaviors, so to just come back to the core behaviors section, one of the things that's really neat about those as well is there are also some little mini courses on the CIPD's website. So you can actually explore each of those individual core behaviors then in more detail. So I think that's a pretty handy tool if you don't know about it already. And last but definitely not least, that outer edge, right, which is sort of we're getting further away from the center, but we're getting more specialized essentially. And so this is the specialist knowledge, right? And that's where you've got all of the specialist disciplines that go through HR, OD, L&D, all of those are sitting in there. But I think one thing that's important to remember with that is oftentimes I think we hear specialist and we think, oh, but I'm not a specialist. But even though they fall into that area, chances are whatever you're doing is going to touch on some of those areas. And so it is a chance to kind of explore that more and to build your knowledge and to still support your work, even if your role itself is not deemed a specialist role. All right, so moving on to the next slide, please. What we're going to do is take a look then just a little more detail. So here with the core knowledge, you can see as you go around. So when you click into the map, when you click on that core knowledge section, it takes you to this part. All right. And then as you move around the circle, from the left, you've got people practice, culture and behavior, business acumen, evidence-based practice, technology and people, and change. And each of those 6 sections, when you click on those in the map, it's going to give you more information about what it actually means to be in each of those sections and what that means for you. So if we can just make sure that we're muted, please, and go to the next slide, that would be great. Okay, perfect. So once you get into each of those individual sections in the profession map, you then get a detailed page. All right. So as you scroll down the page, you'll then find the 4 levels, our 4 levels of membership, with which I'm sure you're all familiar: Foundation, Associate, Chartered Member, and Chartered Fellow. Obviously here I've just cut it, right? So there's just the 2 rows, but it does go on beyond that. And this is a way to then obviously see where you fall. And I think when you start looking at the map in detail and you're looking at the individual membership levels, it's important to realize that your literal level of membership does not necessarily reflect the level of the work that you do. It is very unlikely that you're going to have every single area in one level, simply because obviously we're all unique, our experiences are unique, and even if you're quote in the same role, I mean, no 2 HR manager roles are exactly the same, no 2 HR administrator roles are exactly the same. So what you get exposure to is going to have an impact then on obviously where you fall within those sections. And if we just take that first level, right, we can see at foundation level in the first line, show sensitivity and respect to others. All right. And then as you follow that line through, you can show how then we're sort of talking about working together at associate level. You get to chartered member level. Now we're talking about being a role model. We're talking about advocating. And then at chartered fellow level, you're actually fostering that culture, right? So you're building a culture that then unites people. So it very clearly takes you through the different stages and makes it easy for you to figure out where you fall and maybe where you want to aspire to as well. Okay, so if we can go to the next slide. So then I think we've missed a slide.
That's what there is. in the
Okay.
presentation. That's the order.
Something's gone wrong because a couple slides are now missing that weren't missing the other day, which is not great. So basically with that, because obviously we've talked about the core behaviors, but I don't know what happened to the core knowledge. So sorry, we've got the core knowledge, but not the core behaviors. So I'm just going to pull it up from Mentimeter a bit differently. So then when you're thinking about the core behaviors, so that needs to fit obviously between core knowledge that we just talked about, and then the talking about the specialties. So thinking about the core behaviors, we've got 8 sections there. All right, so this is where we're thinking about things like ethical practice, professional courage and influence, valuing people, working inclusively, commercial drive, passion for learning, insights focused, and situational decision making. So you can see very clearly how those 8 behaviors would lead you to be an effective people professional. And there's also a similar slide in terms of what we just looked at for core knowledge that then kind of shows you how it kind of breaks down again, following that similar kind of format. So you've got the 4 levels. And then the last part here, as you can see on the screen currently, that's where we're looking at specialist knowledge. All right, so that's what you need to know working in those specialist areas. But as I said before, you might not be in one of those specialist areas, but it filters over into your job. So looking around employee experience, employee relations, inclusion and diversity, learning and development, organizational development and design, people analytics, resourcing, reward, and talent management. So again, you can see just by looking at those titles that those 9 areas, while yes, you can be specialized in those areas, they're also going to touch on the work you do at all levels from HR administrator and on up through to an HRD. And if we can just go to the next slide, then again, I'll give you another example of how once you click into one of those areas, so here we're looking at people analytics, once you click into those areas, you again get that list looking at the 4 membership levels and where things fall. So again, if we take that first line, what databases are used in your organization, right? That's what we're expecting of people analytics at a foundation level. And then obviously as you move up, you can see you're learning a lot more about how databases work, how they integrate into the organization, into other systems. And then chartered member, looking at how you're selecting the databases that you use, and chartered fellow, then how can you use that content, how can you use people analytics in that sense to then drive your strategic decision making. So again, also kind of coming back to evidence-based, right, having something to back up what you are presenting at your organization, whatever it might be you be advocating for in that moment. So I'm just going to stop here for a moment and just see if there are any questions that have popped up in the chat or anything that I do need to address before we take a look at the next bit. All right, there's silence. So I'm going to take it that I'll just carry on then. All right, so the next thing that we're going to look at is the quiz, as I mentioned before. Sorry, I'm just having some technical difficulties here. All right, so before we get into the exploration quiz, what I'd like you to do is to actually pull up the profession map. So don't lose Mentimeter because you're going to need that for the poll, but also pull up the profession map. So you can either use the link that I've given you there or simply going into Google and typing CIPD Profession Map. It should be the first thing that pops up and you can just access it that way. Once you get that page open, you'll simply scroll down until you see the map. All right. And obviously, because you'll be on the website, you'll have the lovely interactive version of the map as well. So I'll just give everyone a moment to access that. Once you're on that page, once you're looking at the map, if you can just give a thumbs up using the reaction buttons, that will be helpful. Okay, I'm seeing a couple thumbs up coming through. Just give another moment or two so I can see some more. Okay. All right. Okay. So if we go to the next slide, what I'm going to do is essentially give you a practice question. So when we do the quiz, you can use a fake name, and the sillier the name, the better, in fact, for what we'll be doing with it in Mentimeter. But the idea is you're going to have a question that relates to the profession map, to one of those sections that we've looked at. It's either going to be a question like what's on the screen currently, where you'll have to write an answer. Most of the time, you'd simply be writing the level, or it might be true or false. So for the one that we're practicing, it's simply you would be writing the answer. The practice is not in Mentimeter, so just feel free to pop the answer in the chat. But here the question is, in people practice, all right, so people practice, you've got to think, where does that fall? Is that in core knowledge, core behaviors, specialist knowledge? Find the right section. And then at which level would you understand policy, regulation, and law relevant to your work? So that last part, that last little phrase that's between the quotes, that's what you're looking for in the map. And then when you find the level, just type the level into the chat. All right. All right, fabulous. We've got a couple answers coming through already. And it is, in fact, foundation level. All right. It's always important to look at the map as well, because sometimes if you're not doing that, you might get caught out, because sometimes there are things that we think should actually be one level and they're a different level. So it's always good to refer back to it. All right, so let's see. Are we ready for the quiz? Let's see what we can do. If we go to the next slide, then you should all have the chance then. Exactly, you got it, you got it. Look at that, fabulous. And again, the sillier the name, the better. Just give 1 second, because I can see just a couple of the people obviously are coming in. Just want to make sure everybody's got a chance to show up. All right, got lots of people there. That's great. Obviously, if you have lost the Menti code, you've got it at the top of the screen again as well. All right, that is fabulous. Let's go to the next slide. And you'll get your first question with a little countdown. All right. So when you've got your answer, just type it in. Be as accurate as possible. All right, let's see what happened. All right, got lots of right answers up there. Exactly. So these were going back to the beginning, right? When we were talking about under being principles led, the 3 key principles: work matters, people matter, professionalism matters. Excellent. All right, next question. This one will be a true or false one. Oh. And time's up. Let's see how we've done. Way. Yeah, so taking responsibility for your actions falls under the ethical practice part of the foundation level. All right. Or rather, the foundation level part of ethical practice. I said that a bit backwards, but anyway, you got the right answer. We're all good. All right, next question, question 3. All right, got another true or false one for you. All right, almost there. And, ooh, false is the correct answer here. And I think this is as well why it's really important looking at those sections of the map, because sometimes just if you look at that phrase, you might think it should go in one area or another. But then when you're actually looking at the map, then you can see the difference, where you can see where it fits in and see the difference across. All right, next one, please. Number 4. Going to be writing in a level. Oh, we've got our leaderboard popping up. Look at that. Loving the names on here as well. Maverick, Vroom, Lola, Banana. Got some great ones. Pingu. That's fun. Earthman. All right. Question 4. Let's see what happens. So again, we're just looking for the name of the level. All right. And let's see what's happened. All right, we've got a bit of a mixed bag there, but most people found chartered member. Good. Okay, I can see one that says chartered member, and I'm not sure why that's. Oh, because it didn't have level. That's fine. All right, good. Next one, last question, number 5. All right, and this is another one where you're looking for the level as well. So think. Where's business acumen? All right, and see answers coming in. Very good, very good. Coming into the home stretch. And 3, 2, 1, time's up. Let's see how we did this time. All right, so that was a bit more of a mixed bag, that one. I think we hit all of the levels in that one, but yes, associate or associate level would be the answer there. Okay, fabulous. So let's see what's happened with the leaderboard then. All right. People moving around. It's a tie. All right, excellent job, Banana, Tio, and Lola. All right. Hopefully you had some fun doing that, but hopefully it's also made you just a bit more familiar with the different sections and kind of navigating and looking for the information, and also maybe challenge some of your ideas around what information actually belongs in which level. All right, so let's go to the next slide, please. So we've been talking about the map, obviously, for just a little bit, and we have touched on some uses before. So now I want you to take a moment and kind of brainstorm, what can we do with this? So whether it's a big idea, a small idea, it's not important. Go into Mentimeter, type your ideas. What can we do with the profession map? How can we use it? All right, got some good ideas coming through. Ooh, innovation, I like that. All right, recruitment, good. Workshops. You've got a lot of different things that kind of relate to career development, right? Career planning, progression, developing personal development, professional development, right? A lot linking there. Awards. Now that's an interesting idea. Benchmarking your own skill set, good. Identifying skills gaps, and obviously that goes across you as an individual, but also across your teams and within your organization. All right, development exercises, good. Ideas, absolutely. Ideas conversation, right, is a way to kind of start looking at some of these points in more detail. Okay. All right. All of that looks really good. Obviously, we can see career development and develop were clearly the big ideas that are there. We're going to take a look at some sort of more specific uses as well. All right, just had a few more come through. That's great. That's fine. Okay, so I would say that the way that you can use the profession map essentially breaks down into 4 different sections. All right. So the first one, career development. So this is one that's obviously come up a lot. Obviously, what people are most familiar with when we think back to the poll at the very beginning of the session. But I think it's really important to kind of dive into that just a bit more and explore what that actually means. All right. So when we think about career development, we're obviously thinking about our own development. But that can be job related. So maybe you're kind of figuring out what you want your career progression to be. So you're looking at the job where you are now and the job you need to go to next to be able to keep going forward to reach your goal. So what's the gap between where you are now and where you need to be next? Use the profession map to figure out where are the gaps between those 2 points. What skills do I need to work on? So when we find our own skills gaps, obviously then that helps direct our CPD efforts. So what do we need to look for? What are the specific areas? Because sometimes I think without that direction, then the tendency is perhaps to do the things that we enjoy the most. And so we're most likely to be strengthening our strengths. And while there's nothing wrong with that, it's also good to look at where we might be lagging just a little behind and where we can kind of build up our knowledge. Because particularly when you are thinking obviously about progressing your career, usually things keep expanding as you move up. So you need to make sure that your knowledge keeps expanding and that you are covering all of those bases. So I think it does give you some direction and structure to your CPD, which is really helpful. Um, I think we mentioned at the very beginning as well, the idea that it links to upgrading. So this is particularly important depending on, if you're associate and wanting to go to chartered member, where might you have some gaps? Where do you need to look to fill those things in to be able to demonstrate I am operating at chartered members level in those areas. Same obviously with chartered fellow. So the profession map can help you plug in those holes as well and know and also kind of assess, I suppose, how far you are away from potentially moving up, upgrading to those other levels. Um, I think also, thinking about the workplace, it's come up before as well, this idea of career development for your employees, right? The staff that you're supervising. What does their career development look like? Use the profession map to figure out where they are, where they want to be. How can you support them get to that? How can you support them getting to that place? So it can be really useful when you think about performance appraisals, particularly the goal setting part of that. Um, and of course, just coaching in general. So it doesn't have to be used in a formal way either, like a performance appraisal. Use it more informally when you're coaching your team members so that you're developing that well-rounded team. Which also kind of leads nicely, I think, into the second box here for the role and the function design, right? So with this, then you start thinking a bit bigger, and you're thinking about your organization. What does your organization need, right? What does it have at the moment? What does it need? Thinking about where it is now and where it's going in the future. How do you prepare for that? What changes are going to need to happen within the department? What does HR look like in your organization? What kind of structure does that have? What levels are they? Have you got people who are actually straddling several different levels of responsibility, feeding into different areas across the profession map? Or is it fairly regimented in the sense of where it's falling? So the profession map can help guide you to actually set up your HR department in the most effective way to support the organization that you're working for. And it also helps you obviously differentiate between generalist and specialist roles also, and to be a bit more specific about what you're looking for in those roles. The next box along, recruitment and selection, just in that last exercise, somebody did mention recruitment. So it's really good to see that. And it fits really nicely into that. So when you're putting together your job descriptions, well, how do you figure out what's needed? Yeah, you know what's needed on a daily basis, but how does that actually match with the map? And is that appropriate for the job that you're offering? Maybe that means that you also have to adjust the pay that you're offering as well, because maybe you find actually most of what we're asking this person to do, we're asking them to operate at an associate level, but we're really looking at this as a foundation role. So there'd be some adjustment that needs going on there. It could possibly, if you're doing any headhunting, could possibly help you refine your LinkedIn searches a bit, maybe in terms of some of the skills that you're focusing on. It feeds directly into assessment centers, the activities that you might put together for that when you're going through the selection process. It feeds into your interview questions. And I think is particularly helpful as well the higher you're going as well for some of those more senior roles. It's a really good structure to fall back on to make sure that you are really getting the right people. And it can help you also make decisions about the candidates that you've got for a role because you can see where they fall on the map and you can see how that compares to your current staff. So the person that you're bringing on, are they going to repeat more of the same of what you already have, or are they actually going to fill some of the gaps they have that you have? Are they actually going to add something to your team? So this is a way of figuring that out and making sure that obviously your hires are adding value. Um, and I've included workforce and succession planning here because obviously this does overlap into recruitment selection. It does overlap into role and function design. And it overlaps into career development as well, to be honest. But I also see it as being a bit more distinct from those. So with this kind of goes back to looking at skills gaps. So you can assess your current staff. What's their knowledge? What are their skills? Where are those gaps? And obviously figure out how to support them in filling those gaps. But also when you're looking at succession planning, then it helps you figure out how close is this person to actually being ready for the role that we want them to move into. And that can help you target the support you offer that person to make sure that they have the experience they need to be ready for that role. Because sometimes, of course, we might have a fair amount of notice and a fair amount of time, and other times we've got less time. So it can also then help focus and prioritize what does this person really need support with before they move into that role, and what can they really learn on the job without too much difficulty. So I think that's an important aspect. And I think also it helps you to adapt to some of those predicted changing needs of your organization as well. And being able to kind of know where you are and where you could go and how ready your people are to take on additional responsibilities if your organization's growing, it's going through a lot of change, whatever it might be. And with these points, mainly with the first three, but like I said, the workforce succession planning does fall into the other ones. What I would say is you can also go onto the CIPD website and you'll see that you've got step-by-step guides on there. And so what some of this does, it breaks kind of down, maybe not in as much detail as I might like, if I'm honest, but it does break things down in these different areas. And it also gives you some ideas. So for example, if you take this part of this particular criteria for this particular membership level, you turn it into this sort of interview question. It gives you some ideas along those lines. So that could be worth checking out, I think. If we can go to the next slide, I'm going to kind of have you think about some of these things that I've just brought up. And I want to have a quick mosey in the chat in case there's anything that's popped in there. But thinking about using the profession map then in these 4 different ways, career development, role function design, recruitment selection, workforce and succession planning, thinking about our conversation, how likely are you to actually use the profession map now in those areas? Okay, that's looking good. Give people a chance to respond. All right. Not surprisingly, career development is staying very stable. I think that one's pretty much a no-brainer. But it's interesting what's happening with these other ones, because you can also see obviously in the background kind of where most people are falling. So there's some interesting patterns, I think, there. All right. A couple more minutes, see if things change. Don't think it's going to change too much. But yeah, I think I'm pleased to see those numbers anyway. I hope you have sort of come away obviously with some other things that you could do with the profession map. What we'll do now, if we can go to the next slide, please, that'd be great. We're going to take a little break and have a Q&A session. So essentially with this, if you want to come off microphone, if you want to unmute yourself rather and ask a question or make a comment or share an experience that you have using the profession map, by all means do that. You can also type your questions or your comments or your experiences into the chat, but just sort of a chance where hopefully we can learn a bit from each other. So I'll have Julia just stop sharing momentarily, just because it can be a bit easier if anyone does want to unmute. So I'll just wait and see if anything.
We've got 2 buildings that we're 2 rooms that we're not using. Not it's underused. Put it that way. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, I can hear someone, but I'm not sure.
It's underused. And I'm not talking about us losing it full time. I've said about
I got muted. I know somebody was just speaking then, but I'm not sure if they were answering the question or if we've got a bit of a confusion. I do apologize if you were wanting to share something, by all means. Just come back and let us know if you are. All right. It's a very quiet group this evening. All right. We got anything in the chat? Okay. Oh, I've got a question.
Yes, we do. We've got a question from Jess. How have you personally used the map, Emma?
That's a good question. I like that, putting the speaker on the spot. So me personally, it has been only about career development at this point. And the reason for that is I'm 3 weeks into my first HR role. So my opportunities to use it for workforce planning, recruitment selection, role and function design have obviously been rather limited up until this point. But it's something that I have now in that role been thinking a bit more about and how it could be applied in some context for some of the things that we are working on. But certainly in terms of career development, but I would say more at this point in thinking about kind of where I feel I am and how that matched up to what was being looked at, obviously, in some of the roles that I was going for. So I could try to figure out maybe where some of my gaps were. And I think it was a useful way of kind of going a bit more in depth with the job search, because then it became a bit easier, I think, in some ways to kind of hone in on some of the job descriptions, because then it became a bit clearer some that were going to be a bit roles that they've got the same title, but there was actually going to be more going on. And you could almost tell by the way that the job description was written that there might be a bit more of I don't know how to say this in the right way, as it were, but maybe a bit more of a seriousness behind it and behind the department in that the HR department in that organization. So yeah, but I am excited to do other things with it, I have to say. All right. I don't know if there are any other questions or any comments or anybody wanting to share an experience. It's a point when you're
My
like, there goes
experience
the
is
time.
the same as yours, Emma. We've used the Profession Map in our organization for career development as well. For people going from one pay band to another, from associate to chartered. Yeah. So
Yeah,
I think this is what most organizations use it for. I must admit, it would be an asset for recruitment. So it would be.
yeah, I do think it, and it also kind of helps you then I think I think it's very easy when you're looking at, oh, I'm hiring for this role and it's an entry level role, so of course it fits here. But when you actually look at what you're asking that person to do, you might be surprised, and that should then help you adjust your perspective and help you adjust who you're looking for that role. And as mentioned before, it might also help you adjust the pay, because maybe it's not appropriate given what you're asking that person to do. um yeah, and I think that's a really good point that's just come through in the chat as well. There really is a lot of detail in the map. I mean, it's not something that you can just sort of explore in 5 minutes and you're like, right, I got it. There is a lot to it, and I think when you come at it from that personal angle first, try to get to grips with it, and you start applying it in your own CPD, because even on the CIPD website you can download, like a template, to kind of plot your own CPD, having issues speaking, and looking at where your gaps are and things like that. And so I think, once you go into more detail for yourself and you think about it more seriously for yourself, it becomes easier to also then apply it in those other contexts as well. And yeah, absolutely, for career progression, really, really helpful.
Catherine is saying she's considering upgrading her membership to chartered member, so she will be making great use of the map going forward, to assess where she is at the moment and how she needs to develop. And she's asking if there are any additional resources that the CIPD offers or case studies that are published to help somebody prepare to go through the upgrade process.
Yeah, upgrading is like a whole other session in of itself. Um, so by all means, we can talk about this outside of the session as well. What I will say is next, I think it's February or March time, I will be doing a session on CIPD membership benefits and upgrading. And then in May, there will be a workshop focused on upgrading as well. So there are some upcoming events around that, but I'm absolutely happy to talk in more detail with you about that, because it is an involved question. All right. Not to worry, not to worry. All right, that's fabulous. So what we'll do now then is we're almost like right on the nose. So I'm just going to leave it there, and thank you all for joining this evening. And then it'd be really great. I will stop the recording, don't worry, but it'd be really great if people would like to stay on for a few minutes and do just a bit of networking. We can all sort of get to know each other a bit more. All right, I think we're back to share. Yeah, if you want to move forward one, I think I did have a slide about key takeaways, and I can see somebody's already put something in there, and that's great. If you do have any other takeaways from the session, it'd be really great if you wanted to add those there. I was thinking just with time, I might skip that part. All right. Got a couple things going in. All right, that's really good to hear. Yeah, the map isn't just about career development. I think that sums it up, you know, because I think when you're studying HR, whether that's, you know, at college, university, or you're doing a CIPD qualification, you know, I think it always gets presented obviously in that way. It doesn't seem, or at least in my experience and what people have told me, it's kind of like, well, here it is, go away and explore it. And it is something that I think there needs to be just a bit more attention paid to it, and just a bit more support around that from the beginning, so that we do get the most out of it, because so much work went into the map, right? There's a lot of research behind it. So yeah, all right, this is great. Yeah, recruitment interview questions, I'm glad. Looks like that's going to be really helpful for someone. And yeah, the interactive aspects of the map are really nice as well. It does make it easier to use. All right, that's great. If you just want to pop on over to the next slide, I'll just mention just a couple events we've got coming up. Things focused on L&D, well-being. We've got a busy week this week. And then moving next week into leadership. Next HR Book Club is at the beginning of December. And we've got a couple of events coming up in early January. Unfortunately, don't have a date yet for the BAME allyship event, but we've got a lot going on. You can scan the QR code there, and that will take you to our very cool flipping book. So you can see all of the activities and sessions that we do have going on. And what I will do now is I'm going to stop the recording. Before I do that, just acknowledgements. I really want to thank the event team, because this definitely wouldn't have been possible without Theodora, Julia, and Lauren helping me throughout this in the background. Also, when we send this through to you, we've got like some links there to the profession map. And when you get to that part of the CIPD website as well, you've got an area that helps you find your level. You've got the step-by-step guides. There's a lot more to kind of explore there. We will send you a survey, obviously, after the session as well, so that you can share your feedback. And without further ado, thank you all very much for attending. I'm going to stop recording and we will finish with some networking.